Hey, everybody, it's me, Jonathan Millard, the voice of the Vale, with another Big Hype podcast. And today, my very special guest, joining me live in the studio, well, in her house via my studio, Leanne Bush. How are you, Leanne? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. I'm really happy and really excited to have you on the show, actually, because it's been one of these things that I've had in my mind to do, but never been able to do it. And that is actually announce you to come into the ring.
No, it slipped us by.
It's just one of those things, isn't it? You had I had no opportunities, so I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
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 So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, please now welcome into the ring to the blue corner, Leanne Bush. Yay!
I
I've
do
done it.
miss
I
that
can
bit, I
say I've done
suppose.
it. I've done it now. Yay!
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting how we got to know each other, or kind of know of each other. It was
Yeah.
actually it was through your brother who did
Yes.
a sort of white collar program. Was it White Collar Fighter or
Yeah,
Ultra
he
or
did
one of those
he did
things?
a couple of MMA white collar fights, and I was initially there supporting, and then I had my daughter when I was 27 and wanted to get back into something, and started with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at first, actually.
Hmm.
So the journey into boxing was quite strange. It didn't start out as boxing.
Okay. Let's unravel that then. How old were you when this all? How long were you interested in? I suppose combat sports, if that's where it started, rather than
Um,
boxing per se.
my dad was a martial arts instructor. When I was 5 until I was 12, I did
Hmm.
like some sort of like cross between karate and something else. So I trained when I was like younger for a couple of years, well, 7, I think.
Hmm.
And then got to 12, got to senior school, interested in going out with my mates, and sort of sacked it off. And then when I had Jess, my daughter, when I was 27, I just wanted to get back doing something. And that's why I think I initially went to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu rather than actual striking,
Hmm.
because what I'd done when I was younger, but quickly found that I preferred the striking. But it was
Hmm.
kickboxing first, to be honest. Kickboxing, Thai boxing.
Okay. Okay. And then obviously, so how long were you involved in that? Because that was obviously what about that? Well, we were just talking about this before we came on. Like, yeah, so it's 10 years ago that
Yeah.
that started. So
I
how long did you
think
stick at that for?
I think maybe three years. The problem being that you would train really hard and make a weight just like you do in boxing. You
Hmm.
do that for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu competitions and unlicensed competitions, but the depth of girls wasn't there. So I was making weight for things, and girls were pulling out or they were coming in really heavy, but
Mm.
I was still taking the fights. And I did a couple of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu competitions as well. I think got third or second place a couple of times. So I like the competition aspect of it. Um, but I moved on from MMA quite quickly because there was just no girls. A bit like there wasn't in boxing, I guess, at that time. Like, it seems to be flooding with females now because of the Olympics and amateurs and more exposure on the sport. But yeah, back then it was slim pickings, really.
It certainly is. I mean, the women's side of boxing, as opposed to the women's side in MMA, I suppose now it has seen more people get involved. I think it's become more open and more accessible. I think perhaps for some people,
Yeah,
that they see it. Maybe the influencers as well a little bit. I guess that
yeah,
they're seeing some of these influencer boxers coming through, and they're having a go. And that's probably the best way. They're inspiring these others to get in sport and get involved. So yeah, so
yeah. And I think even though a lot of professional boxers kind of look at the influencer boxing and find it a little bit annoying, probably because of the money they make and the exposure they get in for less of the hard work, I think people feel.
mm,
It's still bringing eyes to the sport.
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get in the whole political argument around the is it right, isn't it right. it is what it is. They do what they do,
It's
and
happening.
like you
Yeah.
say, they're making money from it. And I can only some of the stories that I hear, when you're talking to boxers at shows, when you go, it's you're sitting around catching up with other people, so and so from so and so gym you haven't seen for a while, and then they come onto this subject, and one of them turned around and said, "Oh, he was offered X amount of money to do one fight," and I just went, "That's like a year's salary. Why the hell wouldn't you take that
Yeah.
for one fight?" I mean, but he's like, no, he wants to stay and he wants to do it that way, and I wants to go the other way. And I was going, well, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but like you say,
Yeah.
it's
I
putting
think
more interest in the sport, and if it's attracting
exactly.
more people into having a go and getting involved, then it can only be a good thing in that capacity. Because like you say, I think the board have kind of become a little bit more accustomed to the fact that there are other routes into boxing as
Yeah,
opposed to just the
definitely.
amateurs.
Yeah, because I didn't do it through the amateurs, and I was granted my license, and I know a couple of other people didn't come through the amateurs, and they've been granted board licenses. So yeah, they've definitely um, opened up to that a lot more over the years.
So did you get any? You did have a few amateur fights though, didn't you? Before.
I had unlicensed. In fact, I've done it a bit backwards actually, because last year when I decided not to renew my professional license, I actually
Mhm.
got my amateur card. So I've done it back to front, and I've actually just done my level C amateur judging qualification. So I
Excellent.
judge and timekeep amateur shows now as well. So, but yeah, I did unlicensed, which is like not white collar, not the charity white collar or pink collar stuff.
Mhm.
You're still selling the tickets, and if you get behind like good promoters, you're in some good arenas. Like I've done Motorpoint Arena at Nottingham as an
Mhm. Mhm.
unlicensed boxer. But yeah, it was unlicensed that I came through.
I'm not going to say that. I must. Have
I don't know. You know, when you're boxing, you very rarely remember who's refed and who's
I
called
know.
it.
I know. I know.
Unless the ref didn't give you the decision and then you remember who they were.
Then out comes the little doll and the pins. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No. When you say that, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm involved. I've been involved with boxing for 15 years, 16 years, pretty much. I like you. I like to give it back to the amateurs, and I like to support the amateurs wherever possible. And yes, I have done some of these shows that
Yeah,
you talk about, and yeah, you can find if they're good solid shows productions. Some of the boxing quality is sometimes better than some of the pros. Um,
yeah,
Again, it's how it's matched. If it's matched well and the level are right there,
yep,
then obviously yes, you can still have a good contest, and that's I think something that the fans want to see as well. They want to see good
exactly.
boxing
Yeah,
and 50-50 fights where possible. So
yes.
yeah, okay. How many of those unlicensed or semi-professionals, whatever you want to call it?
So there was two or three kickboxing, three boxing, and then I
Mhm.
went into the pros. So quite quite limited experience, really.
It is, but it isn't nowadays in this capacity. I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
people are coming to the sport with, particularly after COVID. We on another podcast we talked to another one of the other boxers, and he said, well, obviously, COVID was there, and nothing was happening. I couldn't get a fight. There was no amateur fights, so he turned over pro, and
yeah, a lot
he was
did
young.
that.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so it's not unheard of, but obviously, like you're saying, that totally nutty. A couple of more fights probably than some of those guys that sort of did it. So
yeah,
that's
and
the thing.
because through COVID, I got my professional license just as we got locked down. Anyone with a professional license was really lucky because you were allowed to carry on training, whereas the amateurs were told
Mm.
to stop. So for 2 years, we could still travel and spar other professional boxers. So it was just like basically weekly sparring because everyone wanted sparring as well because they weren't getting fights.
Yeah.
So the amount of rounds I probably did in COVID, it's like huge. Basically, like cramming in a little amateur career into COVID, really, because we were sparring as often as we could.
Yeah, COVID was a unique time of year for
Yeah,
everyone. And like I say, you were very lucky in the fact if you had a license, you could still train. There wasn't the opportunities for fights
no,
realistically until a little
no,
bit
not
later when some
really.
people got their heads together on how to actually put shows on. So you had the Sheffield car park, which was
Yeah,
a great thing. Obviously, Matchroom then decided to do that, and or to be Frank Warren and Queensbury were doing the BT Stadium with
Yeah.
with boxers staying in the hotel or locked down in their rooms and not being able
Yeah.
to mingle per se. So lots of ways around it. People found those ways around it, which it made then obviously some interesting television. We can actually watch boxing back on
Mm.
television, which was always nice. Although it'd be an empty arena, some of them were actually probably more focused on the fights as well. That way as well.
Yeah.
Didn't have all the dodgy camera angles of looking at the massive crowds and going, "That's fine, don't worry. Let's just let them carry on singing Sweet Caroline. It's fine. We want to watch the boxing. It's fine." So so good in that capacity. But so you had a lot of opportunities then to spar.
Mm.
Then you had your debut in 2021, which was we're out of lockdown at that time.
Yes. Yeah. And we must have only just been out of lockdown because that's when all shows had to do COVID testing to let you box, and everybody got day before weigh-ins. So
Okay.
it was, I can't remember when we properly came out, but I know obviously my debut was October, but we were still doing COVID tests. I remember doing the COVID test thinking, oh, it's going to come back positive. They're going to tell me I'm not boxing tomorrow. I was
Yeah.
panicking. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it was very close to COVID and end of lockdown.
I was in Wales. I live in Wales, so for us in Wales, we still had COVID for like six
Yeah,
more
you
months
stayed
after
in
you
a
guys
while
did. So
longer.
yeah, let's talk about that less. But not again the political arena of that side of it. But we were kept down for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was good that obviously on that last way. I can't remember when we came out of it. I don't think
No.
there was a date because obviously there were different rules and different regulations in different parts of the country. But that's good. And you came out obviously first fight 6 2 minute rounds.
Mm.
Quite comfortable win realistically.
I wouldn't say so because, and I never know how to say her name, my opponent, so I call her Effie. And I do speak to her
Okay.
occasionally on Instagram because we follow each other. It wasn't easy because she had a winning record. She's fit, like she stays fit all year round. She must do to take a fight on however short notice she took it. Came
Yeah.
from Scotland, and she comes to win. And she'd been in big fights with Rachel Ball. Like, I think they'd both hit the canvas in their fight. Blood
Mhm.
everywhere. I think Rachel might have got Fight of the Year nomination for that in the Midlands board. So yeah, she was a tough opponent. With a winning record on my debut, I do wonder what my manager at the time was thinking there. But actually, in the fight, I think because I knew I had to be switched on, but I
Mhm.
also knew that she was a very come forward fighter, and I just had to hit a move. I fought well, and I don't think I've ever fought as well since that in my other 4 fights. But yeah, I had to fight every second for it. She was ready to take my head off. And I remember in the sixth round, she caught me with a hook, and I remember thinking, 5 rounds I've won, and this is where she's going to get me. Because she caught me definitely, because I
Yeah.
was tired. She'd had me moving the whole time because she never stopped coming forward.
No, she's a game opponent. I will say that I've seen her box elsewhere since that as well. She's still active now as well, isn't she? So
Yeah, she
you know,
she took is it Ebony Jones when she fought for Boxer, she took her to a draw like what, a year later or not so long later, and that is because she is fit and she will be in your face the whole time.
yeah, yeah. So like you said, what was going through your mind? Obviously, when you went into the fight, did you know this person had with obviously you mentioned the record a few times.
Yeah. Well, I think she'd lost only to Rachel Ball. I think she was like 4-1, 5-1, something like that. I
Mhm.
think I remember getting the call on the Tuesday to say that's who we'd got. And I think it was, I said, dodgy decision by manager. I'm only joking because I think because we were only just coming out of lockdown, I think it was a bit difficult flying opponents in then. And there weren't as many females turned over UK wise as there are now. You've got more female journeymen in the UK than you did have then. So
Yeah,
I think we
I
were
agree with you.
limited with options that girls would fight on that short notice in the away corner. So it was on the Tuesday, I think, got the call saying we got her. Actually, I think Stevie Levy actually messaged me and said, "Mate, you're taking that opponent well all in or something, like you've got some balls or something. I was like, what's she on about? So I checked Box Rec, and that's how I found out. Actually, Stevie Levy let it slip, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, and I remember messaging my manager and my coach like, "Why have we booked her
The
again?"
challenge was there, but the challenge was there.
Yeah,
You rose to the
yeah,
challenge,
I did.
and
Yeah,
it was, it certainly put you in good stead with, like you say, she took Ebony Bridges to the
Ebony
draw.
Jones.
Sorry, Ebony
Yeah.
Jones. Sorry, the taking a few other fights. Just looking at a quick look through Ball, but she's won up against Siobhan O'Leary, and she's got Ellie Halliwell coming up as well in a few weeks' time.
Oh, didn't realise she was taking another fight.
Oh, there you
Good
go.
on her. Because
Well,
I know
that's
she
what
is a bit
Boxrec
older than
says. So
me.
if Boxrec
Yeah, she
said it, it must
probably
be true.
is.
So
She probably is. Because I see, I think I responded to one of her stories the other day saying, "Are you ever not in shape?" I think that I sent that to her last Saturday or something. I was going for a story and she's like got the abs out, and I think I responded to it saying, Are you ever not in shape?" So I wouldn't be surprised if she's took it. So yeah, if
well,
so, brilliant. I can't wait to tune into that. Thanks for letting me know.
there you go. There you go. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm sure that armband as well. I don't know if it's anyway. But then obviously we came through that fight. Managers then sort of said, "Well, okay, we're coming out of COVID with 2022 flexibility,
Yeah.
bit more of a sort of journeyman route."
Yeah.
Sorry. Um,
Because we still needed to do the learning on the job
yeah.
because we'd not done the amateurs. And we'd gone straight into 6 rounds as well. I never did a 4 round fight. And I mean, I'd say we needed to work out the weight as well, but we never got the weight right in all my 5 fights. So,
Mhm. How did you manage with the weight then?
yeah, yeah. And I think the weight cutting thing is a big thing in amateur and pro. That
Mhm.
some people talk about when it gets to a certain point that they have to talk about it, and a lot of people don't talk about it at all. And I think it's a big thing in boxing, and I think it causes a lot of problems, but it comes out in conversation when something happens. You know, if someone has a surprise loss, or someone looks really
Mm.
drawn out on the scales, or someone um struggles to make weight, then people want to have a conversation about daft weight cutting. But other than that, it gets brushed under the carpet. And I think that's one of the factors where
Mm.
I sort of had enough last year. So
Okay.
I mean, if I'd have been younger, I'd probably have persevered. But I'm 37, so I don't. Everybody's competing to cut the most weight and be the bigger boxer in the ring, and it's
But yeah, I mean, I've talked on, obviously the podcast is talking to boxers, so this topic isn't new to me. It isn't new to
no,
the situation. I kind of feel that you should be at comfortable
yeah,
weight. If you're not a comfortable weight, then again that's that. But that also comes down to the discussions with the boxers, with the management team, and the coaches, and saying,
yeah,
well, this is where this boxer naturally sort of sits. He's comfortable, she's comfortable at that weight. That's where we should be meeting.
yeah,
Maybe a few pounds either, maybe a few pounds either way, but nothing excruciatingly massively from two weight divisions above kind of thing dropping down.
yeah,
The odd kilo here or there is kind of okay, but yeah, again, it's. I think perhaps again, you don't, like you say, you don't hear about it until you get a massive issue. You had that UFC
yeah,
fighter that passed out on the scales.
yeah. Well, you see that a lot in the UFC. They're shaking and they barely
Do
make it
you,
onto the scales. They get the weight registered, and then people are just grabbing them off because they're ready to pass out.
yeah. Well, again, obviously, I mean, this is something perhaps needs to be looked at higher level. Right now, I think we just have to say it's happened. It happens in the sport, and right
Yeah,
or
it
wrong,
is.
it's something that's there.
And
But
I think
did you find that did you find that you were being pushed into it, or was it just sort of
not.
if the fights are only there if you.
I felt pushed into it with the first management team, who so for the first three. 4 fights. I felt pushed into it, and I think they'd done the damage that by the time I changed management and I was training solely with Rendell, too much had happened with the weight cutting and well, with the love of it, really, that
Yeah.
it was irreparable. And I remember having that conversation with Rendell and Carl Greaves, and like Carl said, if only I'd signed over with him a bit sooner before I'd the weight had taken over. But yeah, I was definitely pressured into it at first. I think the gym hours at the start, everybody is. Because when I say that weight is a thing that is a big issue in boxing, it's not for some people. And I think there's a lot of girls that fight at their natural weight because they can, and they're the
Yeah.
girls that you see doing really well. And the boys as well. I'm just talking about the
Yeah.
girls because I feel like I can give that female perspective rather than the male perspective. But I do know it happens in the male side as well. But I can, as I'm sure other boxers can, I can tell when a girl's got on the scales and she's fighting at a weight that suits her. And then you can see it in the performance. And you never could see it in my performance because I was always scrapping to cut the last bit of weight even on the day. And it was only my debut that was a day before weigh-in, so I had all
Yeah.
night to recover.
Yeah.
So I'm still cutting weight on the day of a fight, which is my fault and not my fault. My fault as in I should have been speaking up and saying, no, I don't want to fight at that weight. And I wasn't until I did. And because Carl and Rendell had been saying to me, are you sure? Are you sure? But I think it programmed into me, no, this is the weight I should be making. And then by the time I said to Carl, I actually do think I'm struggling to make the weight and it's not the right
Yeah.
weight. And I think he looked at me and sort of like, yeah, I did tell you.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad you said it. But by then, we'd committed to a weight with Becky and she didn't want to change it. And it's my fault, I was trying to change it too close to the fight. I'd sold all my tickets, so committed to the weight. And I
Yeah.
struggled every weight cut after my debut. My debut was fine because it was a day before weigh. The 4 fights after were horrendous. And you can see on one of my pictures on Instagram, I look horrendous.
Because Becky Ferguson, that was your last fight,
Yeah,
and that was who you were talking about there with regards to that.
yeah.
And Becky's a a game opponent as well. She's always in the gym,
Yeah, and
and
she's lovely as well, so she deserved the win. It's nothing against. I'm not saying my opponents didn't perform, but I'm saying I definitely didn't.
okay.
My sparring and my boxing and my fights were just night and day because I was sparring fueled. I was probably sparring at the weight I should have been fighting at, but instead I would take another £10 off, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. But I mean that brought the end to the professional then career. Obviously, as you said,
Yeah, I
that
think if I'd have been younger, and what I obviously would have done and could have done was change weight classes and just start again because the 2 losses didn't matter. Having an unbeaten record to me, and I think in female boxing particularly, doesn't mean anything because there's not enough of us that you can't come again, especially at another weight class. So it wasn't
yeah,
the losses that bothered me. If I'd have been younger, what I'd have done is I'd have changed the weight and set everything back and gone again. I'd had enough of the weight, and so even a little cut, I was like, no, I can't be arsed. I've had enough.
that's
Even
you,
even
you've
half
got
a
to do it.
stone was enough. Was enough to
Yeah, and
push me over the edge.
you've got to be happy doing what you're doing. If you're not happy doing it, then you're not going to enjoy it. And that's the thing. If you're not happy doing what you're doing while you're
Yeah,
doing it, that's the question then that comes into the minds of a boxer.
100%. Yeah, and I think, and the ticket sales, which I'm sure is a common thing that boxers would say if you ask them, and it's something weight and tickets. You can hear if you listen carefully on the commentary of a boxing match on DAZN or whatever. You can hear how often they talk about either weight or ticket sales, especially when someone sold a lot of tickets. And I never
Mm.
struggled to sell tickets to cover my opponent. In fact, a couple of fights, I made over £1,000 myself. And that's after paying my opponent and giving my manager their cut. But ticket sales was just, it felt like the actual boxing fight, me and my opponent, was like way down on the priority ladder. Weight came first, tickets came first, social media came first, and I was like, I just want to box, to be honest. And it was killing the enjoyment. Everything was killing the enjoyment. And it was sad because I'd made some really good friends and I'd got some really good sparring partners, Jess Barry, and we used to have some brilliant spars. And I think we had two last spars I had with Jess, and I was just, it's like I wasn't there. I wasn't landing properly. I was taking really silly shots, and I knew then.
It's yeah. And obviously, it's making that decision. It's rather than trying to stick into something and stay with something.
Yeah.
And that's a very mature choice to make that decision and try and do something else. So whereas now, obviously, you've been out of boxing for a year. What have you been up to?
So we are about exactly a year since I told Carl and Rendell I was done professionally. And then I have done like a bit of like long distance running. So I've done 2 marathons this year. I did London and Rome. I'm been doing a couple of swim runs, so like triathlon but without the cycling. Got one next week actually in Devon. And I did actually do the amateurs, like I say. So when you said earlier I have had a couple of amateur fights, I did a box cup in December. And again, because you've got to cut some weight, I get that. And I just don't enjoy getting on the scales anymore. But I think what I was finding harder to let go was the team. I love Rendell and I loved seeing him twice a week, and I really like Carl. And I'd just found an amateur gym that was so welcoming. And Dean, the coach, was like, don't give it up fully, have a go at the amateurs. So for 6 months at the back end of last year, I actually got my amateur card and I did a box cup in December. Then had a break because training for 2 marathons was pretty hard, like time consuming. But at the same time, the amateur gym was like, would you like to do your qualification for judging and timekeeping?
Good.
Level C. I was like, yeah. So I got my lanyard through actually when I came home today. I think we've got some championships happening just up the road from me this in September. So I'm going to get myself over there and help out there.
Get yourself involved because I can talk about my past in that capacity. Been there, done that, got t-shirts, similar sort of thing. It's always, I always try and give back to the amateur side of it as well because
Yeah.
they're the stars of tomorrow. A lot of the ones that I like to, I've seen in the, coming through the amateurs over the last couple of years now have turned over pro and they've gone, they're doing well. Some of them have done super well. Some of them are just doing okay and happy with where they are and everything else. And it's great to see. And it's just, good to see that there is that opportunity. And like I said, now shows are getting busier and busier. The amateur side of it's got busier and busier as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Because it's really good to be out there and support them as much as I possibly can. The whole 2 home clubs that I've got here in my town, I try and support them both whenever I can. So
that's it.
Good
They
to
are
give
the
back.
stars of tomorrow, definitely. And there's a lot of the gyms around here getting flooded with girls as well. Good girls, really great girls that I look forward to being able to say, oh, I've sparred with them or I've trained with them when they turn over, because they'll go far, I think, because they're dedicated. And this is what I said when we were messaging, setting up this chat. What I try not to preach to them too much, like, oh, old wise lady that's been pro, trying to, put all the negativity on things. What I try and say to them is just don't make the mistakes that I know are made. So get your weight right and don't be told otherwise. You stay healthy. Soak in the amateurs, take full advantage of it. Travel the world. If you can get yourself onto the England pathway, listen to what your great coach says. And because when you turn over, if you turn over and you can't sell a ticket, unfortunately, the world of boxing is going to be harsh. So take that time to gain your experience, get really, really good and build a fan base. The people want, the moment you tell people that you have turned pro, they're going to ask, when you fight, can I get a ticket?
Yeah.
Because that is the
Yeah.
biggest challenge, and that's what I think wears a lot of people down, the weight and the ticket sales, because it only a very small percentage walk straight onto a TV deal. So unless you've done something at amateur and they'd be mad not to sign you, you're going to be paving your way on the small hall shows. So have something to give. Don't be afraid to take stuff in the away corner either. Don't be precious about taking a loss, but everybody is in the pros. But
I think, yeah. There's the hype around, isn't it? He's 10-0, or she's 5-0 and 6-0, and now she's going for a world championship or challenging for the the interim world championship or an intercontinental or a European or even the British or area titles now. So there is, I guess. Yeah, probably rightly or wrongly. Again, like you say, it doesn't really affect the boxer if if they've learnt on that lesson and they've learnt something
yeah,
new, and they can take the fights through fights, and then
100%. Because it's like the two losses that I had. Like I say, if I was younger, there'd have been losses and then I'd have carried on.
yeah,
But because I stopped, it would easily look like, oh, I suffered two losses, so I stopped. People were friends, family, Rendor, they were more upset about the losses than I was. The loss to
mm,
Vicky, I was like, I was lazy in that fight. I was lazy, and again at the wrong weight, but I was lazy. That was my fault. And then Becky was weight again. So they were my mistakes, and they were my mistakes to
mm,
either rectify and carry on or decide that what needed fixing I didn't want to fix. I didn't want to carry on and try and fix it, and that's the decision I made. Take nothing away from Vicky and Becky having those wins. They worked very hard, and they, both fights were close. But yeah, everyone else was more upset than me about the losses. I was like, a loss is a loss. Why is everyone
you
so
tried.
obsessed with
It's
the
tried
having an
and
unbeaten
tried.
record?
Yeah. It's that thing of try again, isn't it? Yeah, it's that, like you say,
Yes.
if there's not something that you're unhappy with, in your case, that was the situation, but you still, you would have tried on if you had, again, it's making that mature decision and going, actually, I'm 30, like you say, I'm that age. I don't want to carry on anymore. I don't want to keep doing cuts. I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to try and move into a different arena. And
Yeah,
in this
and
capacity, it's moving back into the amateurs or moving to the
yeah.
amateurs for the first time rather than that. So no, I think that's again, that's a really wise decision. And so how does the marathon running and how does that all affect? Is because running is a different sport too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's less interesting. In fact, it's been hard to get back into running since the London Marathon in April. And I used to run every week without the boxing, because I did a lot of cross country at school. So I've always been a long
Mhm.
distance runner. So the running for boxing has never been a problem. I know some people are like, oh, I've got to go out and do a run. But it's just something I've always done. But since the marathon, since April, I have actually struggled, because I think I ran that many miles and saw the local routes around my house that much. I'm sick of the sight of them. And I knew every hill, every pothole, and so I've had a bit of a break, but I am getting back into it, because like I say, I do like to challenge myself with swim runs, because swimming is not a natural thing for me, although I have had sea swimming lessons, so I'm better now. But I like to challenge myself in that way. But yeah, the marathon's really interesting, and I made sure to book. Well, I booked Rome first, and I thought, because I'd always said I wouldn't do a marathon. I'd done a lot of halves,
Yeah.
and I thought, if I'm going to do one, I'm going to do an interesting one. So I booked Rome, because I didn't get into the London Marathon through space. At work, we get two
Okay.
charity spots, staff
Yeah.
spots, and I'd applied for one and I didn't get it, and then whoever did get it dropped out. So in
Yeah.
February, they came to me and said, "Do you still want to do London?" And I said, "Well, I am actually training for Rome, and it's only a month later." So yeah, so I had 2 months to raise £2,000 instead of 6 months. I still did it. I
Good.
did bake sales and all sorts, but it was Alzheimer's UK, so it was really, really great charity
Good.
to do it for.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, both routes were really, really great because I think as much as I have run in my life and I don't mind running, it can get boring.
I'm not
4
going to say
hours
it, but
running.
I'm the person you're in the room right now. So it's like, yeah,
Mm.
my forte. Lifting, that's fine. I can lift. I don't mind weightlifting. I don't mind don't really like cycling, but I do the cardio if I need to. So yeah,
Yeah.
walking, much fine. That's why I loved lockdown. Lockdown was great for me because I lost weight in lockdown. Everyone was like, "Oh, I found the fridge." I was like, "No, I found two. I walk 6 miles a day every day,
Brill.
2 hours, and the weight was dropping off me. And I was like, then I've gone back to work and back into offices and back on Zoom. Still got Zoom meetings, but now they're just racked into everything else and being in a building rather than at home,
Yeah.
and not having the 2 hour window. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, you mentioning lifting weights as well. That's always been something I've not been able to do properly because it would mess with the weight for boxing. Because I don't know whether it's genetics or what, but if I really get into lifting weights properly, my weight stops or it even goes up.
yeah, yeah. I can understand you're gaining mass heavier and
Yeah,
denser than
so I have to stay
than
away
fat
from
anyways.
them for boxing. But since I've taken a little break, being my personal trainer that I've been with for like 7 years, whether it was boxing, MMA, we've been consistent throughout. He was really excited because we could now change it up and start doing weights. So now I'm doing like 3 to 4 weight sessions a week. So learning all about strength training, and that's really interesting. And yeah, I guess that was another thing when I was thinking about the boxing. It was like it's it's stopping me doing other things that I'm starting to get interested in, that I'm naturally wanting to look into, and I can't
Yeah,
do it.
yeah,
And I think you just have to listen and think, well, if you feel this way, you feel it for a reason. I
yeah,
always say to people, I knew what I felt like when I loved it, and I don't feel that way, so clearly I don't love it. And then since I made the decision, I'll see other things about boxing on social media or on TV, and I enjoy it for other people, but I don't miss it. So I obviously made the right decision. But it is hard because it's like breaking up with someone, and like you don't know how to live without
in the
it.
blood. It's
And
in your blood. Yeah, yeah, this
yeah,
is what we're saying. We're saying this into another podcast. Boxing is in your blood. Once it's in your blood, it doesn't kind of leave, and you're kind of stuck
yeah,
with it. And yeah, I can understand what you're saying.
yeah, and
Yeah,
you get addicted to the feeling of being fit because now I'm doing other sport things. I
mm,
know I'm not as fit, and that does make me a little bit sad because I used to be super fit. And I'll do try and do something that I did when I was training in camp. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not as fit as I used to be.
amazing.
But you have to sort of let that go. I think the biggest stress I did have again was weight. Total opposite of, okay, I don't want to be stressing about everything I
Mm,
eat, and I don't want to be like hungry all the time. I don't want to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and suddenly suddenly hate my weight and be worried about my
yeah,
weight all the time. Learning more about nutrition alongside the strength training has helped with that because
good stuff.
like it was, what do I do about my weight if I'm not boxing? At least boxing, having 4 or 5 fights every year, at least 4 or 5 times a year, I know I'll be a size 8 to 10. What do I do without that?
Oh well, Leanne, thank you so much for joining us. I think what we do is just tell people if how they can follow you and follow what you've been up to and whatever.
Yeah.
So give
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. I'm not on anything else. I'm not, cooling down with the kids like TikTok and all that. But
me them.
yeah, I'm on Instagram as Leanne Bush. So probably don't post as much as I should really because I am very active and I am doing things. But yeah, I mean,
Cool story to
there's a
tell
lot
there.
on there of when I was boxing. And yeah, if anyone wants to ask, if there's any amateur girls out there that think, is there some honest advice they want to hear?
reach out.
I do it in a
Reach out and
supportive
drop you a
way.
message, yeah?
Yeah, I'm not going to try and put anyone off. I just want people to be successful. So it's about being honest, but in a supportive way.
That's right. That's right. We also do a little thing at the end of every show, which is a quick, rapid fire unboxing. So I'm going to give you the questions and I give everyone
Oh
else,
gosh.
and then you can just tell me which one you prefer. Okay, it's a simple either or. Okay, so I think Pepsi or Coke. Yeah, all right.
Orthodox. Body. With a partner.
Okay.
Early bird. Heavy. Underdog. In the gym.
Short, powerful punches, or was it more
Short, powerful. Clean.
loud?
Loud. But I could never hear him. I zoned him out.
The
Strategic win. AJ. Heat Fury.
well, didn't have to say that, but thank you very much, Leanne. Thanks for joining us on the
Sorry.
podcast. Hopefully, wish you every success with obviously you're doing there, and can be continuing to do what you want to do and raise money for charity and those
Yeah.
marathons and other things that you set yourself in challenges. So, thank you one more time,
Thank
Leanne,
you.
for coming onto the podcast. Have a wonderful evening. All right.